Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great day today. Welcome to the 9th event in our IELTS Start to Finish webinar series. So happy to have so many test takers join us today on Zoom and Facebook. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to connect with us. And thank you for choosing IELTS. My name is Kavita, and I'm from IDP IELTS in Australia. Today, we welcome back IELTS expert Don Oliver. Most of you know Don from our previous webinars, masterclasses, and his appearance on TikTok channel. He has more than 30 years experience working in IELTS, so he will have lots of great advice and tips for you. In today's webinar, IELTS Writing Task 2, Don will assess and analyze a Writing Task 2 and provide you examples and share plenty of insights on how the test is marked based on the IELTS marking criteria. You can expect another great presentation today. We will end the webinar with a short Q&A session. So you have any questions specifically around Writing Task 2, please submit it in the Q&A and comments box, and we'll try to answer as many as we can today. The Facebook recording will be available right after this session. So worry not, as you can catch back on anything you learned today. Okay, it's now time to kick off and learn from Don. 2 weeks have flown by. Good to see you again, Don.
Lovely to see you too, KD. And let's begin, shall we? As KD said, we're going to be looking at task 2 today. And we're going to look at the academic task 2 and the general training writing task 2. We're looking at them together because they are much the same. They are assessed in the same way, academic and general training, and the task is very much the same. The academic task is a little bit more academic. It's a more academic topic, and the general training topic is maybe a little bit more of general interest, but the assessment of each is exactly the same. So, as I said, we're looking at task 2, and especially we are looking at the first of the assessment criteria. As you probably know, there are 4 assessment criteria, and we'll look at them all. But the first one is particularly important in writing, and that one is called task achievement or task response. And it means, are you answering the question directly? And we'll talk about that at some length. We will analyze the other assessment criteria, and a special thing today, we will look at 2 actual essays, one very good essay and one at a band 6. And I'll show you why. One is a band 8 and the other one is a band 6. I'll show you also that sometimes people make simple mistakes, and I'll try and warn you about these simple mistakes. So let's begin by analysing the task. This is the first thing you must do in an academic or general training task 2. We help you. We always ask you to give reasons for your answer. This is important. We want your opinion about a topic, about a task, but we also want you to support your opinion. So we want the reasons why you think something. And we want evidence. It doesn't have to be from a book. It can be from your personal experience, from your own knowledge. That means you can support your opinion by saying, this happened to me, or this often happens to people in my country. That's perfectly okay in an academic or general training task 2. In the academic and general training task 2 tasks, you are always first presented with a statement. People do this. People think this. There is something happening. And then you are asked to respond to that statement. Do you agree? Or what are the reasons for this? Or what are the solutions to this problem? For example, we'll look at some examples in a minute. Again, you must give your opinion and make it a clear opinion. It's no good just saying, oh, there are two sides to this, and not give your opinion. Say there are two sides, yes, but say, I believe this is correct, or that is correct. And sometimes there is more than one thing to say. You may have to actually give an opinion about two different viewpoints and then give your own opinion. You may have to talk about the effect on an individual and the effect on society. So you must read the task very carefully. Look at this task as an example. We begin with a statement. Music and film are important ways that a country expresses its culture. Then we are given another statement which says government should therefore support the local music and film industries financially. That's an important part of this question. It's not just saying that we support these industries, it means giving money to these industries. And then you are asked to respond. And here, this response is a simple response. Do you agree? To what extent do you agree or disagree? It just means, do you agree or not? You should say, yes, I agree, or no, I disagree, or I partly agree for these reasons. You might even say, in some countries, yes, this is good, but in other countries, it's not necessary. Music and film are important. We must cover both of these. If you just look at music, or if you just look at film, or if you just look at books, which is not asked, then that would be a bad answer. You must think about how those arts express something about the culture of a country. And you need to discuss the idea of supporting those arts financially. These are the main features. There are really 4 or 5 points there that you should cover. Music, film, an expression of culture, supporting financially. And then, as I said, a simple response is required. Do you agree or not? Let's look at this task, which is a different one, and it's a simpler task. In many countries today, people are choosing to have fewer children. That is the statement. Then you are asked to respond by giving your opinion on 2 different things. Why is that the case? And what are the effects on society? So how many parts are there to the first part, the statement? Well, there's only one really. People are having fewer children. How many parts are there to the response? Well, there are 2, the why and the effects. And very importantly, you must talk about the effects on society. Now, spending 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning of your essay, before you even write, analysing the task is 2 or 3 minutes, which is very, very well spent. It is valuable. Make a note of reasons why. Make a note of a few effects on society. Okay, that's how we analyse a task. Let's analyse the other assessment criteria by looking at the assessment criteria that you can download from IELTS.com. And this is an important tool for you to understand what you need to improve on, where you are strong, what the actual assessment criteria are, and how you can improve your score. As you see, there are 4 columns. Now, each of these columns are equal. Each is 25% of the mark. An examiner will say, okay, the task is answered quite well. I will give a 7 for that. But there are problems with the paragraphing or the linking words. I'll give a 5 for that, coherence and cohesion. The lexical resource, the vocabulary, is pretty good. I'll give a 7 for that. The grammar, there are quite a few mistakes, only a 6 for that. Do you see? The examiner is not saying, oh, that's a 7 or that's a 5. They're saying this part is a 7, that part is a 5 or a 6. It's worth thinking about these assessment criteria in terms of your own writing and thinking, where am I strong and where must I improve? Get a teacher. Your teacher will be able to tell you, well, this part is strong, that part is not. Okay, let's look at these in more detail. At a band 7 for the first criterion, task response, you address all parts of the task. That is important. You must do that in order to get your band 6, 7, 8, or 9. If you don't do it, you will get at most a band 5. For coherence and cohesion, you use a range of cohesive devices, linking words. You use and the correctly. You use pronouns correctly. This, it's, there. We'll look at examples of this in a moment. Also, you need to have your paragraphs logically organized and have enough paragraphs, but not too many paragraphs. That is a band 7 or better. For lexical resource, your vocabulary, you need to make sure that you don't make too many spelling mistakes. At a band 7, in 250 words, a task 2, if you make more than about 5 or 6 spelling mistakes, you probably won't get a band 7. You can see here at a band 6, you can make many more spelling mistakes, 10 maybe. But importantly, at band 6, these spelling mistakes don't affect how the reader understands. The reader can still understand what you're saying despite your spelling mistakes. If we look at the last criterion, grammatical range and accuracy, here the important thing is accuracy, but also range, short sentences and longer sentences. But if you make more than about 6 grammatical errors, you probably won't get a band 7 for this criterion. At a band 6, you could make more errors. But importantly, again, those errors do not affect the reader too much. Okay, that's an overview for you about what these 4 criteria are about. Let's look at them a little bit more closely. The first one, task response, you cover all parts of the question, you make your position clear. The second criterion, coherence and cohesion, you organize your essay in paragraphs and you use linking words, markers. So, but, as, because, after that, of course, if, then, obviously, first, secondly, etc. For lexical resource, accurate spelling is very important. And also using natural words and natural combinations of words, which you will find if you listen to English a lot and if you read English a lot. And for a band 7 or 8 or 9, you will use some more uncommon words, some special words, some exact words which give a particular meaning, and you understand that particular meaning. And finally, for grammar, you want accurate grammar, and you want some complex sentences, some longer sentences. Think about relative clauses. Think about conditional sentences. Okay. Let's look at these criteria in turn. Coherence and cohesion. As we said before, this is a matter of organizing your essay in paragraphs properly. And here you are also using a good variety of cohesive devices, linking words. At a band 8, you manage all aspects of cohesion well. And we'll look at an example of that in a moment. At a band 7, you use a range of cohesive devices, but sometimes you overdo them. Maybe you use because too often. Each paragraph will have a clear topic at band 7. At band 6, maybe the paragraphing will be a little bit illogical. One paragraph will be too long, another paragraph will be too short. If we go on and think about this in terms of an actual task, what sort of cohesive words, linking words, introductory words can we use at the beginning of an opinion essay? This is a good example. This task is asking about reading books. Some people believe modern methods of communication have made reading books unnecessary. Do you agree or disagree? Okay, we start our essay. How might we start this essay? We're going to write 2 or 3 sentences to begin with about the topic, and we will give our opinion. It's normal in an English essay to make it clear at the beginning to the reader what you think. I know that in some cultures, in some languages, what you really think comes later. But in English, the style of English essays is usually that you make it clear at the beginning what you think, and then you support it throughout the essay. So again, it's important that you spend some time before you start writing to think about the task and to think about what your opinion actually is. So we might begin this essay by saying, well, there are several reasons why reading books has become unnecessary. Or there are several reasons why many people believe that modern communication has affected reading habits. Or we might say, for some years now, people have been worried that reading is less popular. These are good ways to start because they are telling the reader, this is what we're going to talk about now. We're talking about modern technology. We're talking about its effect on reading. And I am putting it in context. I'm saying there are several reasons. This has been happening for some years, etc. I might talk about reading habits have changed considerably over recent years. You will give your opinion. This is maybe the last sentence in the first paragraph. I believe, you might say. You might use the word nevertheless because you're saying, well, many people believe that reading is less popular, but I nevertheless believe there is a position for reading, that reading is important. How do we end an opinion essay? And here we have the same task. How might we end our essay that addresses this task? We would write 2 or 3 sentences where we rephrase the question and summarize what we have said. We might also look to the future and say, I'm sure that in the future people will still read books. Or in the future, I suspect that books will never be used again. Because looking at the future sort of sums up what your opinion was. If you're sure about reading, the position of reading, you will say it will continue. If you doubt that, then you might say it will disappear as a skill. So we might begin with in conclusion, or we might say finally, it is important to, or in summary, I believe. Here we might use this in my opinion again. Remember, we can say the word I or my in a task 2 essay. I believe, I nevertheless believe. Throughout our essay, we are linking our ideas. We don't just give one sentence full stop and then start a new sentence. We don't just say things like this, we connect things. Similarly, blah, blah, blah. Similarly, this. In contrast, whereas, on the other hand, nevertheless, however. Do you see that a lot of these words are conjunctions, things like whereas, and some of them are adverbs, similarly, surprisingly. These are the sorts of words that tell the reader what is important, how things are connected, what follows from something else. These are all linking words. They are cohesive devices. And if you look at your assessment criteria, you will see that this is important and it is assessed. So we continue. We look at lexical resource, and at band 8, you are using words which are conveying precise meaning. At band 7, you are able to use less common words and words that are idiomatic. That means natural words in English. What sorts of words do we naturally use? And here is another example of a task. Some people complain that young people today are less polite than they were in the past. Think of words that mean polite. Think of words that mean less polite. However, other people argue that young people should be encouraged to express their opinions honestly. Think of other words that mean expressing an opinion honestly, being frank, being forthright, being direct. Even if this seems impolite, what's another word for impolite? Rude, for example. We were asked to discuss these views and give our own opinion. So what sorts of words do we use here? Well, instead of saying they are less polite than they were, maybe they have somehow become ruder. You are showing the examiner here that you have a wide lexical resource. You have words that you can use as you like. Instead of saying encouraged to express their opinions honestly, you might say that young people are encouraged to speak out and voice their opinions. These are very natural expressions in English. Make a note of them. If you don't know these, speaking out, voice your opinion. even if this seems impolite, maybe is not always appropriate. For example, and again, we're using words to support our opinion. So we will use words like, for example, when discussing politics. It may not be appreciated. All of those words, that just examples, show that you can use other words apart from the ones that we give you. So make that a habit. Find new words and practice using them. And finally, with grammatical range and accuracy, at a band 8, there are very few mistakes, maybe only 2 or 3. At a band 7, you will make more mistakes, but not a lot. And at band 6, of course, you can make quite a few mistakes, but it won't affect the communication. Okay, let's look at some tasks. And here, this is an actual task that was used in an IELTS test, and it's about international tourism. And we're going to look at an essay which answers this question. As before, we look at the topic, we look at the task, and we think, well, how many parts are there? International tourism has brought enormous benefits to many places. This is a statement. What do we think about it? Well, yes, it's improved the economy, it's given jobs to people, it's introduced new cultures to the tourists. At the same time, there is concern about its impact on local inhabitants and the environment. People stop doing other jobs and they just do tourist jobs. Maybe bad habits are introduced and bad practices are introduced. Maybe there's too much money going to some people and not enough to other people. Maybe the environment is affected. This is what you do at the beginning of your task 2. You think of all the reasons for, all the reasons against. You look at the task. What am I asked to do? And here you are asked, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, or vice versa? This is an essay which gets a band 7. But you'll see that it's not a 7. It's a 7 for the task response, the first criterion. It's only a 6 for the second criterion, coherence and cohesion. It's an 8 for lexical resource, it's vocabulary, which means there are hardly any spelling mistakes and it uses some very good, less common vocabulary. And it's a 7 for grammatical range and accuracy. Maybe only 4 or 5 or 6 grammatical errors and a range of grammatical structures. Let's look at some parts of this now. Let's begin by looking at coherence and cohesion. Now remember, coherence and cohesion means that the linking words are used so that we understand how one thing links to another thing, right? And there are different aspects of writing which will affect that. One of them is pronouns. Is the pronoun correctly used? Do we understand what it refers to? If I look here in the 4th line, it says, arguments have come up regarding the benefits and negative impacts of tourism on places and on its local inhabitants. Places, plural, and its local inhabitants. This is a problem because it is one and places are many. This is a problem with cohesion because the reader thinks, well, what does it refer to? It can't be places because places is plural and it is singular. We go on and we see money is circulated within the country, and even the stability of their currency's rate of exchange persists. The country is singular, but we talk about their currencies, which is plural. Do you see, again, this is the same mistake that we already saw, but in reverse. The noun that their refers to is singular, but their is a plural pronoun. These are errors in cohesion. And it goes on. Locations, such as pollution. Pollution is not a location. Areas, such as peak times. Areas are not times. Where local inhabitants feel uncomfortable. Times where or times when? Do you see here that the pronouns that are used are often wrong? And this is one of the reasons why CC, Coherence and Cohesion, only gets a band 6. This is an important lesson. Use your pronouns correctly because this is assessed under Coherence and Cohesion. Look at the good element in this essay, which is the Lexical Resource, LR, the vocabulary, and you can see that the words are very sophisticated. They are very natural, quite an impact. Adhere to their own beliefs and way of life. Change from their morals and ethics. Specific times can be allocated for tours to certain areas. A win-win exchange. Poor countries with natural beauty. These are very good. This is a good range of vocabulary, all spelt correctly. This is why this essay gets a high score for Lexical Resource. The assessment panel for this essay said this about this essay. And basically, it's what I just said, that the candidate addresses all parts of the task, so it gets a 7, and presents a clear position. However, though the ideas are well organized and there is a clear progression, there is some underuse of connectives and substitution and some lapses in the use of referencing. And this is why it gets a 6 for that criteria. The candidate has a good awareness of style and collocation, words that go together. And that's why this person gets an 8 for Lexical Resource. And finally, there are minor errors, but quite regular errors in grammar. And that means that the score for that criterion is only a 7 and not more. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to move on from that. And remember, you can see this presentation online later on, and you might like to pause there and have a look at it more closely. So we go now to another task, and we're going to see an essay which scores less than that one, and it's on a different task. This task is about shopping, and shopping is becoming more and more popular as a leisure activity. So that's an important thing to think about before you start writing your essay. Do people shop for leisure? It's a different type of shopping. It's not shopping for groceries, it's shopping for fun. However, some people feel that this has both positive and negative effects. Then the response, why is shopping so popular? And then the second part, what effects does its increase in popularity have on 2 sections on individuals and on society. So in order to answer this question properly, you have to talk about the effects on individuals and the effects on society. You have to ask yourself some questions. How would you rephrase the words that are given to you? How many parts are there to the statement? I've already discussed that. We're talking about shopping as a leisure activity. And the response, the why, and the effect on individuals and society. Three things, really. How many paragraphs would you use? In 250 words, I would recommend 4 or 5. Maybe not 6. More than 3. Let's look at this essay, which gets a 6, 6, 6, 6. So this is a clear 6. And you'll see as you read this, that this essay is not as good as the essay we just looked at. The choice of words is not as wide. The grammar is not as accurate. The spelling is not as accurate. It does address the task because it does give the why and it does talk about the effects, but it really doesn't address the why very much. It talks about that in the second paragraph, but that's all. And that's what a band 6 looks like. It doesn't treat all parts of the task equally. It treats one part a little bit and treats the other parts more fully. And that's what this essay does. Shopping as a leisure activity is an issue that raises an endless debate. So let's look at some of the problems with lexical resource here. We can see that there are quite a few spelling errors. Now, these spelling errors are a little bit confusing, but not completely confusing. Erases, relaxes, proxy, the right to choose, violence of nature. These words are sometimes misspelled, sometimes it's a bad choice of word. Here, these are the corrected words, not erases, raises, not relaxed, relaxed, not proxy satisfaction, but probably counterfeit or maybe false satisfaction. Not the right to choose, but the chance to choose is what this person means to say. And you don't talk about violence of nature, but you talk about the violation of nature. These words would improve this essay. This essay would get more like a band 7 or 8 with those corrections. And here we see some of the grammatical errors. And a lot of the grammatical errors are about the use of prepositions and articles and plurals and singulars. Here it says an issue that raises an endless debates. Debates is plural. An endless debates or an endless debate. Something is wrong. In this essay, I am writing to about. We don't need the to. We already have a preposition there. The reasons of shopping's popularity. The wrong preposition. The reasons for shopping's popularity. Leisure activities. A kind of leisure activities. We can't say that. A kind of one thing, activity. Most of all, many shopper, the plural, the S is missing. The preference of shopping should be the preference for shopping. We have those little errors there which mean that the grammar cannot get more than a band 6. And as before, I'll let you read this if you look at the recording of this presentation. But basically, this is what the examining panel said about this essay. And it's basically what I just said. It's a band 6 for every criterion. Let's move on. There are different types of question in task 2 writing, and it's important that you understand which type of question you are being asked. And this simply means that you read the question carefully. Sometimes you have to discuss 2 views and give your own opinion. In other words, there are 3 parts to the question. Sometimes you are asked, why is this? And what can be done about this? Why is there this problem? What are the solutions? Sometimes we are asked if something is true or not. And then we are asked for a solution to that. Sometimes we are asked to make a judgment about whether the benefits are more than the disadvantages. Or maybe we are asked to make a judgment as to which is the best out of a group of advantages. All of these things are what you are asked to do, and there are more things that you are asked to do. So I would recommend that you read every question very carefully before you begin your essay. Sometimes people forget to do that. They forget to take a few minutes to analyze the task. They forget to write down a few words, a few points that can remind them to mention these things. Sometimes they just quote the task. They use exactly the same words in exactly the same order. Don't do that, because that is not showing the examiner that you can use the language yourself. Sometimes people forget to cover all parts. Be careful about that. Sometimes people forget to write a proper introduction and a proper conclusion. This affects how the essay is read by the reader. It confuses the reader. It begins too abruptly and it finishes too abruptly. Sometimes people forget to support their opinion with examples. And remember, the examples can be very personal examples. Sometimes people don't write enough words, or sometimes they write too many words. I would recommend about 270 words is a good number for a task 2 essay. Remember, paragraphs. Don't use subheadings. Don't use dot points. Make sure that you use full sentences and full paragraphs. As I said before, 4 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs is about right for 250 words. And always leave some time to check your work at the end. How are you going to practice? Well, you will have your own ways of practicing. You may be lucky that you have a teacher. You may have someone who is a native speaker of English, who likes to read your essays. I would always recommend that you spend a lot of time on one essay rather than making 10 essays where you repeat the mistakes 10 times. Regularly read, because reading will support your writing. And also you will get information about the types of topics that are in the writing test and the topics which are in the speaking test as well. If your English is not at a high level, look for simpler English to read. Use Google. Go on the internet and find articles for ESL learners. Make a list of new words and always revise them. The more words you know, the better your writing, the better your reading, the better you're listening, the better you're speaking. If you're not sure of a grammar point, you can always find the answer by Googling that grammar point, and you will find an explanation. So I'm just going to finish by simply saying there are many things that we can help you with. If you check out our resources at IELTS.idp.com, if you go to our Facebook page, the IELTS Essentials, if you go to Instagram, if you go to TikTok, if you go to our YouTube videos, you will find lots of information. And please ask us a question on Facebook. The next session will be in a couple of weeks, and we will be looking at your questions. And that, I think, will be a very interesting session. So mark it down now and register for that. It's at the same time, and I'm looking forward to that as well. So I am going to finish now because I want to hear your questions, and I'm sure you have plenty of them. KD, over to you.
Thank you, Don. As always, another amazing presentation today. So many amazing tips. And we received many questions as well. So I hope we can get through as many of them as possible. So let's get started. Someone asked, I understand that it's not best practice to use any memorized language, idioms, phrases, or examples throughout my essay. They are easy for examiners to spot and don't really demonstrate my ability to write fluently. Is this true, Don?
Well, it is sort of true. But as you know, KD, and you speak more than one language, learning a language is memorizing words. But there are some phrases that are repeated often by candidates. And it shows that they have prepared, but it also shows the examiner that it is not really their genuine level of English. So I would avoid those set phrases like every coin has two sides, etc. They are cliches in English, and it's not actually very good, a very good style in any language to use those sorts of cliches. What you do need to learn and what you do need to remember are natural phrases that you find yourself, and as I said before, reading and listening to English and making a note and revising those phrases is probably the way to go.
Thank you, Don. The next question, should I write the essay in first person or second person? And should I write I strongly agree or use this essay strongly agrees?
Don't say this essay strongly agrees, because that is not really how we write an essay in English. Say I agree. I strongly agree. You can use the first person in an IELTS essay quite easily and quite appropriately. An IELTS essay is not the same as an essay that you would write for your university course. At a university, you would say, well, it has been stated that blah, blah, by such and such, page number, but we don't expect that in an IELTS essay. It's perfectly appropriate to say, I think, and then continue.
Great, thanks, Don. Someone asked, what's the difference between A, do you agree or disagree, and B, to what extent do you agree or disagree? Thanks.
There is really no difference. To what extent is giving you the option of saying, I partly agree, I fully agree, I agree to some extent, I agree a little bit. But of course, you would say that anyway in answering the question, do you agree or not? Because we never totally agree, or maybe we do, but we would say that. And you would always say, well, I agree in my country, for my country, it's very true. But in other countries, maybe it's not. You are, in fact, answering to what degree you agree or disagree in that way. So don't worry too much about that.
Perfect. Another person asked, do you have any books or resources to help me improve my writing skills?
There are many books, of course, as you know, but I would always recommend that you be very careful that you find books that are published by publishing companies that you can respect and that you can trust. And the ones that I'm thinking of are Cambridge University Press. Now, Cambridge designs the IELTS test, so you can be certain that any preparation materials from CUP, Cambridge University Press, are authentic. Oxford University Press, etc., other recognised publishers, and also, of course, as I mentioned, the materials that are on our website. If it says IDP, if it says British Council, if it says Cambridge University, you can trust those things.
That's great advice, Don. Another person asked, if I don't know any facts and I can't answer the question, can I make up one or two facts that I think would be believable?
Yes, you can. You don't have to tell the truth, but it's always easier to tell the truth. And remember that these tasks are always tested first, and they're tested with several hundred candidates. And if, for example, a task is shown to be difficult for people to write about, then that task will be changed or dropped. And that means that you shouldn't expect a very difficult task. It should be a task that you can say something about. And even if you can't say very much about it, you can spend some time talking about why this is not a big issue in your country, for example. You know, if it's about pollution, you might say, well, pollution is not a big issue in my country because blah, 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 blah. But you should be able, for all task 2 topics, to say something. And if you can't, make something up.
Great. Thank you, Don. The next question is, I'm usually told that I overgeneralize. So how can I avoid that?
Yeah, overgeneralizing, it's an interesting thing. Overgeneralizing means that you are really just saying something that needs more support. You know, everybody likes to watch TV. TV is very interesting. Okay, well, why do you say those things? Ask yourself the question why, or are there examples? And if you ask yourself those questions, you'll probably find that not everybody likes TV and that not all of TV is interesting. Because you have asked yourself some questions as to the truth of what you've just said, then you will stop making generalizations and you'll make a statement like this. Many people find TV interesting, although some of what's on TV is in fact quite boring. Now that is not an overgeneralization because you are being more specific.
That's a great tip. Alrighty, another person asked if there are two statements in an agree, disagree essay, do we have to give our opinion individually on both the statements, or do we have to generally give one single opinion?
If the question is to what extent do you agree, or do you agree or disagree, you are really only asked to give one viewpoint. Yes, I completely agree for these reasons, or I disagree for these reasons. That's okay up to about a band 8. But at a band 9, the examiner will ask him or herself, can anything be added to this essay? And of course, something could be added. You could actually talk a little bit about the opposite view. You should really, as a general rule, say, some people believe that blah, 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 for these reasons, but I believe this for these reasons. That's a good policy, I think, for every essay.
Great, thank you. Next question. During the writing tests, when time's running out, should we focus on trying to appropriately develop the body paragraph or finish them quickly so that we have enough time to write the conclusion, which receives more scoring weight?
I would always finish the essay satisfactorily. I have seen essays that finish in mid-sentence. This is a problem, you know. And to conclude, I would say, finish. Pens down or pencils down. That's a bad essay because the examiner will say, I must give this essay a low score for the coherence and cohesion. That second criterion, because it is not coherent. It doesn't conclude. I don't know what that person was going to say. So finish that conclusion. And then, if you have time, go back, fix up other things. And remember, in a pencil and paper test, you can always just put a little arrow and add extra and say, this goes up here. And the examiner will read it as you want it to be read. Make it clear that you want to insert something at that point, and that's okay. In the computer test, of course, you can easily do that by cutting and pasting. So my basic message is finish the essay so that it concludes satisfactorily.
Perfect. Thanks, Don. We're racing through these questions, Don. So let's go on to the next one.
I can have my dinner soon.
Would using American or British spelling pose an issue? More importantly, using both in the same essay?
It's the International English Language Testing System, which means that it accepts British spelling, it accepts American spelling, but it doesn't accept bad spelling. So it doesn't matter. If you want to spell colour, O-R, if you want to spell, I can't think of any more examples, but you know what I mean. It's very unlikely that you would spell colour O-U-R and then spell it O-R in the one essay. But even then, it's not really a problem because both spellings are acceptable. So don't worry about that. If you have learned American spelling, that's fine. If you have learned British or Australian spelling, and to be honest, speaking as an Australian, we use both. We use some American spelling and we use some British spelling. So we're a good example of that.
Thank you. I have a question about uncommon words. Someone asked, can you please provide me an example of an uncommon word that can help me score band 9? And what are the examples of advanced vocabulary words for a band 8 score?
I could be, if you have another 100 hours, I could go through the whole list. But I think if I just go back to that essay that we looked at, band 8 for its lexical resource, you'll see that that essay, and go back to look at the recording of this session and go back, and there are some good examples there. One that springs to mind is a win-win situation or a win-win position. Now that is a very idiomatic phrase in English. It means that everybody wins. It's advantageous for everybody. And that is a good example of something that is not uncommon for a native speaker, but it's probably something that is not learned by a learner of English very early in their study. You will find many of these sorts of expressions and words and terms when you read and when you listen to English, okay? And I would, as I said before, make a list and revise that list, and that's all you really need to do. Just one last thing. Some candidates think that the more unusual words they put in, the better. And this is not really correct. Unless you are 100% sure of how to use a word, don't use it. You don't need a lot of difficult words. You just need a few which are used correctly, okay?
Okay, I think we've only got time for another last question. Someone asked, is it necessary to include my position in the introduction, or can I include it in the conclusion instead? Or do I have to leave out my opinion out of both the body and introduction completely and leave my opinion until the end to ensure a neutral perspective in the intro and body?
No, I've already answered this question. It's normal in an English essay that you make it clear what your opinion is, what your position is early, and you support that position throughout the essay. This is not necessarily true in all cultures, in all types of writing in other countries, but it's, as a general rule, it's what we do in an English essay. So I would recommend that in the first paragraph, you make it clear what your position is and you support that position throughout.
Thank you so much, Don. Really grateful for your time. And I see so many comments from test takers expressing their sincere thanks to you, helping so many of them. And to all of you who joined us today, we truly appreciate your time. If we didn't get the chance to answer your questions, make sure to message us directly and we will answer it. Meanwhile, a reminder that we've created a brand new IELTS Prepare Hub, a one-stop shop for an official IDP IELTS preparation material. In this new hub, you can access all the resources you need in one place. From articles, videos, to online courses and practice tests. We have even published every webinar we have ever hosted there. So visit ielts.idp.com/prepare to view the hub and let us know what you think on social. Well, that wraps our session for this evening. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Katie. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.